Good evening. First of all, please could I ask you to close your eyes? Okay, nice, tight shut. Could you please imagine an orange and then put that orange on a table? Any sort of table will do, wood, plastic, metal, anything you like. Keep your eyes shut, because this is the hard bit. Now lift that orange up. Don't touch it. Just make it levitate up. And whilst it's a few inches off the table, switch tables. Give it a different table. And then bring it very slowly down onto the table. Okay? So we've got 80 oranges, maybe 160 tables, all coming to you through language and imagination. And none of them exists. You can open your eyes now. Hi. I'm here tonight to talk about language and my worries about it and the way I think that we all need to have our antennae waving and alert. I guess the oranges and the tables would be fairly recognizable as such. But when language becomes a bit more abstract, then it becomes more problematic. I love chocolate. I love my children. I love dogs. I love France. I love my wife. I love your hair. So many shades of meaning in an important little word. Does it confuse us? I think it does a little, and sometimes we get a little scared. But normally, we sort of see where we're going with it. We sort of read the signs, we interpret the signals, and we more or less chart a path towards meaning. Just sometimes the GPS doesn't work, and the wires get crossed, and we reach conclusions that are wrong. We read yes as no, and no as yes. Unsurprisingly, therefore, when push comes to shove, when our backs are against the metaphorical wall, we retreat into silence. Words fail us. Words just can't explain. In love, in grief, we often seem to communicate at a level beyond language, with gestures, with silence. And perhaps we're all the more honest for that. Because after all, we know that language can sometimes be intended to deceive. And we learn from quite an early age to distrust it. We need to look beyond the surface meaning and see what lies beneath. Words are tricky things. They slip and slide. So, how do we find our way through this? Whom do we know what to trust, whom to believe? How do we find the clue to guide us through the linguistic labyrinth? Trust me, I'm a journalist. But we all know the inbuilt political bias of the press. Surely nobody takes seriously the tub-thumping jingoism of the Tory tabloids. But people do listen to their broadsheet cousins. My wife would say I believe everything written in The Guardian and The Observer. I don't think that's entirely true. But do we believe the BBC, as once we did? Do we believe politicians? Politicians with their slogans, their buzzwords, their sound bites, their tricolons. A couple of weeks ago in The Guardian, the writer, one of the journalists wrote that all people in public life, whatever their political persuasion, lie copiously and consistently. Now, I may be hopelessly naive, but I very much hope that he's wrong. I hope that there are plenty of politicians and journalists out there who are idealistically working to further the common good. But I guess he's right to be sceptical, as we have all learned to be sceptical about estate agents with their rather overblown descriptions of what that cupboard actually is. Well, what about those emails we get from Nigeria promising millions? Probably every claim needs to be taken with a kilo of salt. Trust me, I'm a scientist. Well, where do you stand on GM foods? What about global warming? Are you with the Pope or are you with the US Republican right? And what about fracking? In February this year, in the Oxford Today, which is a fairly serious magazine, one scientist claimed that fracking was safer than you think. And then in the following edition, another scientist claimed it was too risky by far. So where do I stand as a non-scientist? On the fence? Dangerous, standing on fences. No, I think we've got to commit ourselves to find out. So do we believe the, frankly, unbelievable, overblown hype of Gasland? That's a film, if you've not come across it before. And they would say that it is all the fault of the industry. Or should we believe the industry with their laughable, and frankly quite devious denials? Should we side with the state of Texas, who a month ago banned all bans on fracking? I think we should stop believing, taking the word of people who are economical with the truth. We need to be inquisitive. We need to question the weasel words, the half-lies, the blurred lines. Above all, we need to think. Think for a second, if you will, about the Allied coalition and their intervention in Iraq, or should that be Iraq? Many of us in the West were persuaded of the strength of the forces of darkness, the axis of evil, as it was called. I guess the Pentagon's hype traded on real fears, on lived history. Saddam's treatment of the Kurds, political opponents, and further back, other despots. What happened in the Balkans, Pol Pot, Stalin, the Nazis, with their desire to give greater Lebensraum, living space, to the German people, which resulted in the relocation, i.e. extermination, of millions. I don't know about you, but I don't know how we can believe all this at all. How about WikiLeaks? Edward Snowden. Do we trust them? For all their failings, for all their shortcomings, they surely have reminded us of the Orwellian fantasy, or is it a fantasy, of the totalitarian state controlling thought. With governments of today, and of course they have to, listening in to their citizens, closing down, controlling websites. Is this the way we're going? What can we do about that? It seems to me that in the wrong hands, and who is saying whose the right hands are? In the wrong hands, it is a modern day equivalent of burning books. You disagree with us, we shall destroy your ability to express your dissent. That is very scary. In a play in 1821, prophetically. The German writer Heinrich Heine, in fact referring to the burning of the Quran by the Spanish Inquisition, said that when books are burnt, human beings are destined to be burnt as well. Those words, of course, are enshrined in Bebelplatz in Berlin, at the very spot that books were burnt, organized in 1933 by Joseph Goebbels. Books were burnt because the people who wrote them were claimed to be dissenting against what the German government wanted them to say. Other dissenters, of course, it was undeutsch what they were expressing. 20 years later, McCarthy's witch hunts were angled against those accused of un-American activities. We must stand against those who set themselves up as authorities. We must resist those who tell us what we can and cannot read. We must protect language. We must not devalue it. We must cut out the dead wood, sure, but look after it, care for it. We must resist the stereotyping label. Not all commies are bastards. Not all bankers are fat cats. Not all Catholics are good. Not all blondes are dumb. Be wary also of the advertiser's blandishments. He may seek to distract or conceal. Does your farm fresh, organically fed, premium grade chicken mean that chicken preparation plants will have glass walls anytime soon? Language needs to be cherished. Language needs to be guarded. Language gives us jokes. It gives us poetry. It gives us stories, a narrative other than our own. Words feed our imagination and our dreams. I've come some way from oranges and tables, but language does that. It takes you away on the flow. But as with the rip current, you must be careful. Language hurts and language heals. So mind your language. Mind it well. Trust me, I'm a teacher. Thank you.